Hey everybody, welcome back to the Nexus where we spotlight some of our favorite local businesses. This is going to be a fun show today. I'm really excited to introduce you to Michael Worrall and Sheri Tills. They are the co-writers of Next 24, self-motivation, personal growth, awesome book with a really great message. And thank you so much for coming in today and sharing your story with us.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah. Well, I don't know who wants to go first, but I do always like to ask, just where you're from, how you got to Lincoln, why you're doing what you're doing today.
Well, I'm originally from Lincoln, and my background was in education. I used to teach and coach.
Cool.
And then got it. Of course, life changes. Things change. Different careers, doing stuff like that. But the answer to the question how we got into this was I think the crossroads of COVID.
Yeah.
For example, and of course there's been other incidents, September 11th, COVID, housing market. But just know during the darkest times is that people just seemed at that time, I noticed people just isolated themselves. They weren't talking, they weren't sharing. I was falling into that own trap.
Yeah.
And I think
the more connected we are by devices, the less we're feeling true connection.
Absolutely.
With human.
And just to mention how this all came about was I just felt like, of course, as we all get to those crossroads, getting a little older, I had turned 60 at that point, and I realized, boy, I'm not doing what I want to do with my life. There's something I want to do. But I also knew that my mind wasn't right at that time. I probably wasn't, because of what was going on in the world. There's a lot of stress.
Yeah,
and I observed a lot of stress.
Yeah.
And I said, this new normal is not normal.
Yeah.
And I just thought to myself, what can I do to share my life stories of ups and downs and heartache, and maybe perhaps help somebody else change their mind, help them off the knees. And so, as the book says, discover happiness, true joy in your life while you create a legacy. Certainly, we thought about our own legacy. What is it we want to leave? So this is what we want to leave when that time comes down the road, and hopefully that it'll help somebody else change their life.
That's so cool. I named the company True North Technologies based on a book.
Yes.
And in that book, it talks about the 3 phases of your life. You know, the first one just really being more about yourself, getting through college, whatever, getting your first job. Then the second phase is, your world expands a little. You get, a family, and you maybe start caring about the company or teaching other people. But then eventually you get into the third phase of your life, which is where you care about your legacy and passing on your knowledge. And so that's so cool that I had the pleasure of meeting you when this was just a concept.
Right. Yes.
So I'm really, really proud of you for taking action and actually writing this book.
Well, I was scared to death, and just to mention the process, if anybody's interested in trying to write a book, it is very confusing.
Yeah.
But you've got to search out publishers.
Yeah.
You got to find out what the difference is between, we went through the vanity publishing, the self-publishing. There's so many different
hybrid
roads
publishing.
to go.
Yeah.
It was really tough too. Luckily, we went through a company called Page Publishing that we thought was the most helpful. It's a bit of a mix between helping self-publishers, but they did the full marketing, putting the book together.
That's great.
The marketing piece they helped us with, the editing process. So there was a lot more that they offered to us.
Well, that's so cool. That's a helpful tip for viewers, anyone that's thinking about writing.
But
I'm telling you, the process was long. It was very much a learning process. Even having a book cover design, it just so happened, I lived in Lincoln for part of my life, and then we moved like in middle school. Back then we called it junior high.
Yeah.
But, so I've been around there, but a lot of family connections to Lincoln. And, lots of bumps in the road.
Yeah.
Going through to get to those 3 phases and things. And when I met Mike, it was just right after COVID. I was in a deep, deep dark hole, coming out of a deep dark hole. Bad abusive divorce. I had a special needs daughter taking full-time care of. We had to leave the house for safety, live in my older daughter's basement for 7 months. On and on. Mike told me about the concept that he had of this book, and I'm like, I need this. Not only do I need this, I know there's a ton of people that need something like this. He threw me the first chapter is all he had, a rough outline. I'm like, you need to do this. We need to find a way to do this. Just so happened, and I just bought a new house, and then 2 months later, another new neighbor moved in on the other side of me. He graphic designer and graphic artist for UNMC, and
Oh, perfect.
He goes, I'll do this for very minimal amount of money. I'll do it on the
That's
side.
awesome.
And he came up with the cover, and so we kind of were doing it in bits and pieces.
Yeah.
But I'll tell you, like Mike said, if you're looking at doing this, research, and know that I think the hardest part of this was the editing. Even though you have editors,
and how many revisions you have to go through.
Yeah, and you have editors through your publishing company, but then they throw it back to you. But you have to go almost word for word, line by line, because they miss things. Then you're going through, then you miss things, you take things out, you add things in, then you throw it back to them, then they throw it back to you, and it was a process. I mean, almost a year process.
Well, even just selecting the title of the book, is there a story behind that?
It was really just thinking about, I noticed during COVID and during the time, if you take 24 hours a day, my question always, why are some people so successful and other people struggling so much in that 24-hour day?
Right.
And I noticed my own habits and my own daily routine. If I got up and if I was in a bad mood, my day was bad. So I realized, boy, if I started reading books. I realized if I had to change the way I thought a little bit, let's start getting back to some old habits, good habits.
Yeah.
Get away from the negativity and started reading books, listening to tapes, journaling, getting into some positive things. And so that's where I really kind of came up with that. What can we do in small steps of change in the next 24 hours to get a little better and a little better? The hourglass really represents your life. The time is short. It does
have a finite number of days.
Because, quite frankly, Sheri and I talk about it, we just cannot believe how the years have passed so fast.
We have a friend that he's the owner of the radio station, 93.7 The Ticket, but he went through a really, really major health scare about 8 years ago. Major health scare. Yeah. But what he has done is now he counts how many days he has been on the earth, and every day he'll post something on social media. Okay, today is 22,876, and I'm just pulling that out of my head. And so here's what I'm thankful for. Here's what this day is going to include. That's and cool. It's like when you look at it like that, it's like, whoa. Yeah. And tell your statistics about longevity.
Well, just looking at it now that I'm 63 now, the average life expectancy for a man is 73 years.
Really? So in the United States even?
So if I took 10 years left on average times 365 days, that's the number of days in that glass I have left.
Right.
On average.
That's crazy to think about.
It is
and tomorrow's not a guarantee.
But it is scary.
Absolutely.
It is scary, but it just gets your mind thinking, my goodness.
Yeah.
Where did all that time go?
Yeah.
Look where I'm at now. So the whole concept was get the people to look at that thinking, okay, the past is holding you back. You've got your minds, you're mad about something that happened years ago. You've put yourself in a limited mindset. But is that really how you want to continue to live?
Right, so what do you want to be known for when you do die?
So the whole idea of the book is we're not telling them what to do. We're just saying, hey, be open-minded to think. Look at this and just think about yourself.
Yeah.
What do you want to do? What do you want to change? What would you like to do differently? What's on your bucket list? What's on your dream board? Yeah. Do you know how to even do one? Yeah. And so we take them through all these little different steps. So. And
it's not a matter of, okay, we're older and what are we going to leave for our kids and our grandkids? This applies to 18-year-olds, 19, 20, all through your 20s, all through your 30s. There's so many things in here that we have talked about that we wish we would have been taught by somebody. We wish we would have known so we could have made some different choices, made some changes in our lives to where we're not getting to our age and going, oh, whoops. Now we got to try to hurry. Yeah.
The problem is, will they listen? If they're willing to learn.
Here's the biggest problem. I just wanted to mention this. I think it's true. Have you noticed people don't talk anymore? They don't share.
Yeah.
I mean, they're so isolated. They don't really afraid to share. They look vulnerable.
They'll only
they don't want to talk.
share the positive things.
But if people would get together, like in a community, a neighborhood, a group, whatever the group may be, and just let the walls down, share a little bit. What's going on in your life?
Yeah.
Perhaps that story will help somebody else.
For sure.
That's the idea.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
or maybe you can help somebody else, or maybe somebody else can help you. We want to get people back into the back of the just where, you know, people just talk. If you're at the church or at the school or in a community or at a group, start talking a little bit.
Even your families. You know, even families.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, how many families sit around the dinner table and communicate and talk about their day? Most of them are sitting there doing this.
It is common. I mean, it definitely happens.
Yeah.
And there's so many distractions in our lives now.
So we're hoping that this will guide people. We want this to be a tool. We're not a book, a traditional book like, well, have you ever looked at many of the books, read books, and you thought, well, that's a nice book, but it's not talking to me?
Right. Like, that's a great idea in theory, but that doesn't apply to my life. It's really just like, that could only work for this or this, right? Yeah, so, I agree with that.
So we tried to put this in plain, simple language that people could understand, that maybe something, if they read it, that maybe something would click, and that they'll do something. Yeah. So that's the love of this book.
That's cool. And I like that it almost feels more like a workbook. Like that it's a work in progress, right?
Well, and there is the back part of it, it is a workbook where you can actually write and you can answer questions and you can do things that are pretty much your personal thing, your bucket list, your, you know, working out, nutrition, exercise, you know, you can keep a list of all that stuff in the back. So it's kind of 2 books in one.
That's cool.
And we talk about faith too, because a lot of people, even though they get nervous about talking about that, it's just thinking about, hey, maybe there's something even bigger out there. So take the time to explore it. Yeah. Start reading.
I think a lot of people have lost, you know, that connection, and it is, you know, something that can be very powerful in your life.
Well, you just look at the news every day now. Look at what's going on in the news and the things in the world, the community. Yeah. It's a lot of negativity. Social media. You know, I used to drive the bus for the city.
Yeah.
And I used to pick up so many people that were homeless. Yeah. And they were young.
It's so sad.
That was a part of this too. It was like, my gosh, they're so young.
Yeah.
And they don't change their habits. I would pick them up year after year after year. They're still doing the same thing. And many of them were homeless or had health problems. Some had passed away. Oh man! At a young age because they were so bad, and I just something's wrong. Yeah. So again, that's why this is done.
That's right. What was your previous career?
My previous career, for the majority of my life, I was in the medical field. Okay. I was a certified medical assistant. I taught medical assisting for a little while, but most of my time was spent in oncology and cancer and blood disorders. I loved it. I love it to this day. I had 3 daughters and single mom, good part of the time. My youngest daughter was she was special needs and medically fragile. The last 8 years I had to quit my job because she had a progressive brain disease and she got to the point where I had to be her full-time caregiver, which, you know, I mean, medical just spilled over into that, but that was okay. She was my baby, and so that was my full-time. Unfortunately, we suddenly lost her at the beginning of March, but
sorry to hear that.
She was pretty amazing. I'll tell you what, she was so amazing. But yeah, pretty much medical. So when I met Mike and we started really talking about this, and I'm like, this is so needed. He's like, well, I want you to help me write. It's like, what? No, see, I'm not a writer. I'm good. You know, and I'll admit this online. Years ago, my daughter had 2 friends that hung out at our house, and they were 1 paper away from graduating from high school, so Miss Sheri wrote the paper for them, so I did write, but I've never written a book. And I thought he was nuts. Like, this is crazy, but you know, the more we talked and the more he started working on some chapters and we started collaborating, it's like, okay, this is...
Right, your perspective would definitely add a component.
And he's like, I want you to write some things from a woman's perspective. And, I mean, a lot of women have gone through a lot of junk and have come out the other side so successful. But the walking through was the hard part.
Yeah.
And that's kind of my...
Yeah.
That's kind of my career story, so to speak.
You've always wanted to work with people and help people then.
Oh, absolutely. I'm a people person, and I'm a caregiver from way back.
Yeah.
So,
for sure.
But I loved working in oncology, and I learned so much, not just intelligent-wise, but I learned so much from people and watching my patients and watching how they handled it. And I wrote a little bit about this too. You see people that get a terminal diagnosis, and all of a sudden they're in a hurry to do all the things that they should have done their whole life. And I always thought, why weren't they doing this before?
Right.
And it's, it didn't matter. I mean, I had patients from, 19, 20 years old all the way to, 80s and 90s. And you kind of watch how they go through that kind of process. And
you would have learned a lot by experiencing that so many times.
Yes.
People go through that.
And in that specialty, you see those patients all the time. I mean, you see them sometimes every day, and you get
They're
to
faced
know them.
with them.
And they confide in you, and you meet their families, and you go through all that. So there was a lot to be said from that angle. But no, I was not a writer. I was not an English lit major or anything like that. But
just real world experience.
Yes, absolutely. And but that's, I think, the heart of this is people need to be able to relate.
Yeah.
They need to be able to relate how this applies to their lives.
Well, I'm anxious to read it myself. I have not read it yet, so I was curious if either of you have a favorite chapter.
Oh, I think my favorite chapter is an emotional chapter, but is really about my parents. Because I was the youngest of three. So when I was born, my mother was 42, my dad was 48.
Oh my goodness!
And my mother died of leukemia when I was 19. But my father lived another 30 years. But those were lonely 30 years. He really loved her and missed her.
Yeah.
So to honor them,
tell
their story in their book, they were really good parents.
Aww.
So I think that putting that in there and letting know, because I think they needed a little bit of a legacy too. When sometimes when you pass away, you're kind of forgotten about. You just kind of drift on, and nobody knows her story. And she was a wonderful mother, but a homemaker. Nothing special as a writer or a scientist or a lawyer, but very special in the home. She was the glue that kept the family together.
Yeah.
And so to honor her for that's the best part.
That's cool.
Yeah.
It's just, and I'm like Mike. I mean, I think our personal stories, so many people can relate to the ups and downs that we walked through in our lives. I'm not going to go into all of the details of mine. Buy the book and you can read it. But it's like, I come from an angle of being a woman, having gone through 3 really bad divorces, a lot of chemical abuse, drug abuse, abuse as a child, at school, and back then you didn't talk about that. Just becoming a caregiver at 10 years old of my siblings, I mean, there's so much to it. And, I think writing those chapters for both of us was so emotional.
It would be.
But, for me, the other thing
it's like a labor of love because you know that it could help somebody else.
Absolutely. And, but bringing it all together, and, once again, Mike talked about the faith component, but when you bring all the chapters together into it, it's, our faith has come into play to bring us from point A to point B, and so that's kind of my favorite.
And what's amazing, though, by doing this, I wanted to share this, because I know we're probably running out of time, but the most wonderful thing, by people changing their goals or habits and creating something they thought they could never create, this has opened a lot of other doors.
Yeah.
And here our book is on the shelf at South Point Mall.
Yes, at
Two
Barnes
places.
and Noble.
Barnes and Noble.
Wanted to
Yes.
mention that.
It
Yeah,
is
that's so
there.
cool.
But that was a challenge to get it on the shelf.
Yeah.
Because most times you can get it online on Amazon or Barnes and Noble, but just to get it on their shelf was a challenge.
Definitely.
But they did a very good job helping us.
Oh, they
do
were
that.
awesome.
So that was a big milestone for us.
Yeah.
The other thing though was when we got to know Derek Pearson, which you may know Derek. He's the owner of 93.7 The Ticket.
Oh yeah. I know Rebecca. His wife.
Rebecca.
Oh, okay,
Rebecca,
yes,
right, yeah.
yes.
Uh-huh.
Right, and so Derek and I talked, and he's also an author of a book.
Oh,
That
cool.
they've put together. He's
couple books.
all about it's on influence coaching and
Yeah.
the impact of influence is the
Yes.
title. But Derek saw something he liked in this. So again, this project opened the door where he saw something where on Sunday mornings at 7 a.m. he gives us an hour show, and out of that book, and Derek giving us time to show, we've had about 7-8 shows. I just want to say that we've had common people on the show. I want to mention Ben Houchin. He's the Lancaster County Sheriff.
Oh, amazing.
He came on air and gave a tremendous story of how he dealt with colon cancer.
Stage 4, yeah.
You know, you wouldn't think about it. You see Ben every day probably on
Right.
channel 10, 11. But again,
Strong and able.
the basic concept of this book was here's a common person who may feel their voice may be forgotten. We want you to come on air, tell your story, tell what's important to you, and what worked for you to overcome things.
Yeah.
And that has been the theme of every show. I can just tell you, we've had amazing stories.
That's so cool.
Amazing stories.
And
from
everybody
many.
does have a story. We've all
Yes.
had something that we've struggled through.
Yes.
So
Yeah.
that is it can be something that people can, unite by their struggles.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And we've got an amazing lineup coming in September. I'm so excited. I can't.
Can we share who we're
Yeah,
having
that'd be
on?
great.
I
Tell
can't
them who-
contain myself.
Just tell them for September.
Yeah, well, this Sunday we're having Dr. Jamie Dodge, who is here in Lincoln, and he has a medical clinic, and I'm sorry I can't remember the name of it,
Well,
but
he's changed the
he
name
also
sometimes, but-
does a lot of alternative medicine
Uh-huh.
in addition to your traditional medical.
Yeah.
And then in 3 weeks
Well, then
what
Sean Turner,
yes,
Chris Rath, he's a former football player at Nebraska.
yes.
Oh, cool.
And he has a show on 93.7, but he has a really cool
Right.
story too. And then an old friend of mine who you hopefully have heard of, Dave Weber. He was the
Right.
sports director and the sports guy
Yeah.
on Channel
the
6
news.
for years.
Yeah.
Dave's coming on and he's so fun.
Oh, cool.
And I will admit it, I'm a diehard Husker football girl. Grew up with all boys. We only played football all day. But Johnny Rogers is going to be our final guest in September.
How cool.
And I've met Johnny before. He's a friend of a friend, and he's funny, he's fun. But Johnny has a really cool story to tell too. About
that's
his
awesome.
football days. And,
Is there a way to listen if we're not up at 7 a.m. on
Yes.
Sunday?
There is. I'm glad you asked.
Yeah.
Well, the way they do it at 93.7 The Ticket, you can go on YouTube.
Cool.
It's immediately on YouTube, and they've got an app that you can download.
Okay.
I know Sundays are a little early.
Yeah.
And it's not just like when you listen on the radio. They do the whole live video thing.
Oh, fun.
So
Right,
when you go
right.
on YouTube,
Right.
you see it like we're seeing this. It's almost like a podcast / radio cast, which is fun.
That is cool.
And they have amazing staff there. We have an amazing producer. Our main producer is Harrison, and I can't say enough good about him. And then we've had some stand-ins, Jake and Ben. But the whole staff down there is just, they're phenomenal. They're
so
just
cool.
phenomenal.
I really love what they're doing with the station. They're really doing so
Oh,
many
I do
things.
too.
Have you had a chance to walk inside there?
I haven't been in it yet, so I'll have to go check it out.
It's quite amazing.
Because you can watch live on air, right?
Watch it live. They've got memorabilia of all different sport events. They've got a mill coffee shop within the
Yes.
place. They also rent that place for
Yes.
events.
Like
Cool.
you
It's
can
just a
rent it
really-
out to do tailgating now
Yeah.
with football starting
Fun.
next week, to have little parties and
So-
stuff. They've got TVs all over the place.
Awesome.
It's
I
really
do need to
awesome
check
what
it
they're
Yeah.
doing.
I think what I want to share, what's so beautiful about, just because of the book, the way it was created like that, and their idea of just bringing many of the, I use the word common people, but they're not all stars that come on the show, just everyday hardworking people. They have an hour of fame. I mean, I say that in a good way. They come on, tell their stories. They get their picture taken down there at the station. You should see their faces light up. That's
cool.
the beautiful thing. To give them
And
a
how
moment
you
of
started
that.
talking about it, how this book has opened up that door for you, and then it's opening doors for other people. So that's such a neat.
And
Yeah,
they just, like Mike said, they get so excited. But I think some of the thing I love the most about doing the show is the last couple minutes, and we tell them beforehand, the last couple minutes like is yours. We're going to give you the mic, and you tell the city of Lincoln, the city of Omaha, surrounding areas, what you would like to leave them with.
Oh, cool.
Yes, and they're just, but they just come through.
And people love this city and love this state so through and through that I'm sure you hear some really cool things.
Yes, it's been fun so far. I mean, I just hope and pray that it just continues. But all of a sudden, we're getting all these people, and we're booking way out. And
love it.
Yeah, so it's good.
Well, I'll
it's fun.
definitely check it out. Thank you for sending me that link.
Oh, you're welcome.
And everyone that's listening today needs to check it out too and buy the book at South Point at the Barnes and Noble. So
and Amazon.com. And,
yes.
And we also have a website.
Yes.
It's www.next24book.com.
Awesome.
All right.
Well, thank you so much for coming
Thank
in
you very
today.
much.
Thank you.
Really
Thanks
appreciate
for
it.
having-
Thanks for sharing your story.
Let me just say one more thing.
Oh.
For those of you out there, and especially the small local businesses, if you want to be on our show, go on our website, send us an email, contact us, and we will reach out to you and we will talk to you and get you on our show.
That's so cool. That's
Yeah.
a great offer. Thank you. All right. Thanks everybody
Thank
for
you.
tuning in.
Thank you.